Hi, John Salvara here, talking about SAT criteria number 4 and the SRS basically. In the last video, we talked about what an SRS is, how to make it in Word, and we looked at requirements, constraints, and scope. If you haven't seen that video, watch that one first. We continue on with this one. So, this one we're looking at technical environment and audience, okay, because that's in the rubric there, we need to cover that. And some key knowledge, use case diagrams, context diagrams, and data flow diagrams. So quite a bit. Let's see how we go, see if we can fit it into one video. Technical environment, very simple. Everything digital about your application. What are you using? Okay, hardware, software, tell me all of it. So consider the following attributes. What hardware is needed? So a working computer, keyboard, mouse, monitor, internet connection, so forth. What operating system? Is it Windows or Mac? Is the solution standalone? So can you just sort of double click on it and it will run? Or do you need other software like VB? Okay. So think about those things in terms of your environment. List any and all hardware and software that will be required for the technical environment. Okay. Bearing in mind, of course, that when you make your application, you are probably basing it off the size of your laptop screen, and your user may have a different size screen. So something to think about there. I talk about different hardware here. It's more of just a refresher in case you can't remember. But yeah, it's all there. That's fine. Yeah, feel free to mention it at that level as well, to go down and say, you need this much RAM, you need this sort of CPU, etc., and so forth. Okay. RAM being like your short-term memory, it's the applications. They store the running applications inside RAM. CPU is like the brain power, so how hard it can process, how well the computer can process. Okay. Genetic environment, put all that in your SRS. Audience. It's all about your users. Who are your users? And what do they look like, I suppose? So what age are you targeting? What country is it going to be for? Because all of this will change how you might put your application through. So some of these things you might think about: their age of the user. Okay, if they're kindergarten age students, probably going to need a touch screen. If they're older people, it might need to be very simple, because they might not have the digital literacy or the computer literacy. So it's sort of twofold there: computer literacy and age. Gender, most times doesn't. You sort of want everyone to use your application, but it might be specific. Country can be important. Okay. Cultural background. So things like, just be very clear on what words you're using. Don't use slang and that sort of stuff. But also there's other things you take into consideration, like some cultures don't like the use of photos of people that are deceased and things like that, so you need to make sure obviously that your application wouldn't have anything like that in there, because it would affect the audience. Think of a brand, right? Do you guys know the brand Globe? So if you look at a lot of the images for Globe skate shoes, where is it? If we go to their website, let's say. You can sort of start to see what they're doing in terms of their audience. Think about the people that are looking at this and see what they've put on their website, right? So they've got younger people. Okay. It is a skate brand, so obviously they've got people skating. But they're younger. They're mostly male. Okay, that's not to say the girls don't skate, but certainly Globe seems to be targeting males more than females. Okay, so just think about that for your audience. All right. So an example of what technical environment might look like, right? A real simple one. Must be running Windows 10 or later. Must have latest version of Visual Basic installed. Requires a working computer with attached monitor, keyboard, and mouse. Right? Very simple. For high marks, I suppose, you want to be going into more detail, talking maybe about some other hardware that's required. Audience, just talking about your users and trying to be as specific as possible, right? If you tell me, I want everyone to be able to use it, then it's like, okay, you've actually got no audience then. You have to have an audience, particular audience, right? If you try and talk to everyone, often it's found that you talk to no one, right? Pick someone to talk to, right? In this sample, we're talking about high school students at MacKillop College, okay, because this is the enrolment application. Catholic Run High School in the western suburbs of Melbourne, includes both female and male, between 12 and 19, from diverse cultural backgrounds. Some students may have English as an additional language. Students will be able to use computers in the computer labs at their schools, okay? Important, because then they may not be required to have one at home or something like that. They can use the ones at schools. Okay. We also want to include use case diagrams, data flow diagrams. That's fine. So that's audience done. All right. What you want to be doing is a paragraph like that. Cool. Excellent. So use case diagram. What is a use case diagram? At the simplest level, okay, it looks something like this. So there'll be an actor. Right, so who is the person that will be using the application? In this case, it might be a patient. They are associated to like a task, okay, or a use case. In this case, it's making an appointment. So patients can make appointments using whatever system this is, okay? So when you make your one, it's going to be your user, whoever that might be. In my case, it's a student. And instead of make appointment, it'd be something like choose subject. Okay. Another example, getting more complicated. A patient here, again, making an appointment. They can also cancel appointments, request medication, pay bills. And they've got people on the other side. Okay, so these are people at the organization, I suppose, that might take on these roles to complete these tasks. Okay, so a scheduler is required to help make the appointment. Now, in a really small doctor's clinic, this exact same use case can be used even if there is just one person. Okay, so it's a single doctor, and the doctor is also the scheduler and the clerk. The use case would still look like this. These are considered roles. Okay, so one person can actually fit into multiple roles. When they are being the doctor, they are filling out the request medication. When they are being the scheduler, they are making appointments and cancelling appointments. Cool. So yeah, an actor is a role, not a person. That's the example here. Order entry clerk and the CEO. The CEO can also do the order entry. Sorry, Mr. Sotheby is the CEO. He can also act as the order entry clerk if he wanted to. Okay. A few notes. There are includes and extends. Include must occur. All right. So it looks like this: the dotted line, a little arrow that says includes. So enter order, and find customer record. So in order for this person to enter the record, to enter the order, this process actually includes finding the customer record. Okay. So even in this process, I might just have, put in a customer number. I might put that in, and then part of this behind the scenes is actually going and finding the customer record, getting it up, pulling up the information, putting it in as part of the order. Okay. And extends can occur. All right. So it's optional. It doesn't have to occur. So quick example here. Feel free to pause it because this one's a bit more complicated. You can, the customer, the client can order food. They can also order wine if they wish. They don't have to, but if they wanted to, they could as part of ordering their food. Okay. There's other stuff here, but we've seen how this works before. Mostly just showing you the extends. Some questions there. Don't worry about those at this stage. Just try and get up a use case that you can include in yours. If it is more on the simple end, that's fine. If you can add some extra detail, that's awesome too. So that's use case, all right? Focusing on the user, what the user can do with your system, right? Real high level stuff. Context diagram. Okay, a context diagram is all about how your system will interact with things outside of your system, so other entities. For example, this bakery. The system for the bakery, okay, interacts with a cake supplier which is outside of that organization. Okay? So the bakery says, okay, give me a cake. Yep, awesome, here's cake, great. Excuse me. The bakery also has bakers outside of the system, right? So the bakery says, we need these bakery requirements, and the bakers say, well, these ingredients are getting low, feeds it back in, and the bakery then has to handle whatever it does with that data, okay, and so on. Have a think if you can figure this out. Maybe pause it, and then I'll say what the answer is. Ready? Customers. Cool. Awesome. So context diagram, think about yours. For mine, right, the student enrollment, it would be, I would have my application in the middle. I would probably have, doesn't have to be 4 boxes, right? It can be 100, right? But I'd have students would be one because they're putting data in, taking data out, that sort of thing. Some sort of timetable that has to try and make all the selections work. That'd be another person because they might get the list of the chosen subjects at the end. So this one up here might be students. This one here might be timetabler. And there might be another one which is like the VC coordinator perhaps that's then changing what subjects are available. And that'd probably be it. Okay. So context diagram is very simple. Very, very simple. Data flow. These ones do get a lot more complicated. I will touch on these a lot more later. I might actually make a separate video for these on second thought. Legal. This is a key knowledge that comes up. It's not specifically required as part of your SAT, but if you talk about it, it's going to look really good. So it's all about the key legal requirements, about the ownership and privacy of data and information. Your application will have data and information, so you need to know about the legal requirements. The biggest and most important one that you're going to face at this stage, we'll talk more about the other ones later, at this stage, think about the Privacy Act of 1988. 2 really important things for you to know. This is the easiest to describe. The data needs to be kept secure. All right? You're storing sensitive data about people, perhaps, and you've got to make every reasonable effort to keep that secure. Firewalls, antivirus, encryption. Encryption is huge. Big whole video about that coming up. But you've got to keep it secure. Okay? So think about how you might do that with your application in the back of your mind. Okay? The other one is privacy policies, terms and conditions of use. Okay, these are just things that organizations do relating to the ownership and privacy of data information. Don't worry about actually making privacy policies, terms of use and that sort of stuff at this stage. It's not required as part of your SRS. Okay? It's just background information, I guess. Privacy policies, we'll talk about how the organization is going to use the data, what it's going to be used for, how it's going to be stored, how it looks after everyone, that sort of thing. Terms and conditions of use is all about how the user will use the system in a fair way and not abuse the system, all that sort of stuff. Okay. So that's it. That's everything you need to cover, except the data flow diagram. I'll talk about that in a separate video. Thanks for watching. Best of luck. Cheers.